What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got our Week 8 NFL game picks, outright versus the spread, along with our locks of the week. So make sure to tune in if you guys enjoy. Hit that like button, subscribe. Also, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us, shooting us your questions, and see what we think these games should reflect as we get closer to kickoff. And better yet, if you guys want to get early access to these picks, all you have to do is check us out online at alldaypigskin.com and sign up for a free newsletter, and you will get just that. All the details in the description. But with that being said, let's get right into it. Before getting into our breakdowns, I want to give you guys a quick word from our sponsors at Overlay Fantasy Sports, who are taking DFS to a whole nother level. And I specifically want to highlight their matchup shop function, which is an absolute blast. In fact, we've been using it since the start of the NFL season because, let's face it, betting on the same old Team A versus Team B can get a little bit stale, a little bit boring. Well, that's not even close to being the case with the matchup shop of Overlay Fantasy, as it allows you to bet on individual player matchups, and it's super simple. Just pick whichever player you think will have the higher fantasy performance, and just like a regular bet would work, check out the spreads, do your research, and then win some money. You can bet on pretty much any single sport that you want, whether it's NFL, golf, MLB, etc. All those options are there. And again, super simple. Pretty much for any single NFL game coming up, you've got a bunch of different matchups that are always updated and added to. So if it's something as simple as just putting a single submission, you can do that. But guess what? If you want to get a parlay going and double up some of those winnings, you can do that as well. So take advantage of this. All of that homework you're doing for your fantasy lineups, let's have that translate to some big time winnings for your wallet as well. So do yourself a favor and check out Overlay Fantasy's matchup shop now. Our first game of the week featured the Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers on Thursday night. And if you guys follow us on Twitter at AllDayPigskin or sign up for a free newsletter at alldaypigskin.com, you got access to these picks early. And in fact, you saw that we like the Panthers outright. But on the spread, Panthers were at -2.5. We said we think the Falcons are a great sneaky play on the spread because the last time these two teams played, Matt Ryan was without Julio Jones, a top 5 wide receiver, and the Falcons were still dealing with Dan Quinn as their head coach. Now, when you factor in that there were going to be weather conditions in this game, we actually went on Twitter, and for all of you guys that follow us on there, we said we probably update our pick to the Falcons outright, and once you know, that's exactly how this thing panned out. The Panthers defense couldn't really get any stops going. They made some questionable plays on 4th down, and Julio Jones was just able to do anything versus this defense. Matt Ryan outplayed Teddy Bridgewater, and the Falcons ended up getting their second win of the season. We begin on Sunday with the New England Patriots at the Buffalo Bills, a classic divisional clash. The Patriots 2-4 after yet another concerning loss, while the Buffalo Bills 5-2, beating the New York Jets. But to be fair, it wasn't a pretty victory either, and wasn't as decisive as one would have hoped. Basically, what we're trying to say is that neither one of these teams has been all that impressive these last few weeks. But at the end of the day, if you're asking us which team we have more faith in at this point in time, especially offensively, we have to go with the Buffalo Bills. I do believe that Cam Newton and Josh Allen are similar type of quarterbacks in terms of they are more run-oriented, but right now Josh Allen is playing better, a little bit more accurate when it comes to spreading out the football. And obviously, when you throw in the trio of wide receivers that he has in John Brown, Stephon Diggs, and Cole Beasley, you understand why, and it makes his job a lot easier. Now, you compound onto that with the news coming out that Julian Edelman has a knee issue that will force him to miss probably several weeks. Things get even worse for the New England Patriots offensively. Edelman was their most reliable wide receiver, and in a game where weather might become a factor, you're going to need those playmakers offensively, and the Patriots are just so void at those areas. And, prior to the Edelman news, we were going with the Patriots probably on the spread to keep this game close. But again, we think this hill that the Patriots and Cam Newton are going to have to climb, with Newton shouldering, again, the majority of the load, it's going to be tough. Maybe it's close to begin with, and the weather plays a factor in it, but I do believe the Buffalo Bills will ultimately pull away in this game. Right now, they are the more complete team. I've got them winning this contest and pulling away late on the spread. It's -3.5. And again, I would take them there as well, along with outright. Next up, we've got the Tennessee Titans at the Cincinnati Bengals. The Titans 5-1, coming off their first loss of the season. But hey, kudos to them for a hell of an effort versus the Pittsburgh Steelers that came up just short. And I guess in a similar breath, the Cincinnati Bengals 1-5-1. They barely lost to the Cleveland Browns in what was an aerial showcase. Joe Burrow continues to sling the football. AJ Green, Tyler Boyd, Higgins continue to do their thing. And honestly, here you could argue that Joe Burrow has the better trio of wide receivers. But when you look at the picture as a whole, well, a lot of things stand out. First and foremost, for the Bengals, that offensive line continues to be an issue. And secondly, and even a bigger factor here, is that defense is such a huge crutch for them that no matter how well Joe Burrow plays, it seems like he's always playing from behind. And I believe that this will be another one of those scenarios, because the Tennessee Titans, with guys like an A.J. Brown, who has been tremendous since he came back from his injury, and then Derrick Henry in that mix, and with how efficient Ryan Tannehill has been, I think they can handle this Cincinnati Bengals defense. And honestly, I think this can turn into another instance of it being a huge Derrick Henry type of game. And yes, they are missing someone like a Taylor Lewan, and that started last week, yet, they were still able to do some nice things. And I think it won't matter all that much here versus the Cincinnati Bengals. And I would have to guess that the Tennessee Titans pull away late in this game. I just don't see the Bengals being able to keep up with them. And for that reason, I like the Tennessee Titans outright. The spread only +5.5 for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, for what it's worth, Joe Mixon expected to miss this game. And I've said it before, I think Giovanni Bernard is a better overall running back for this team. And maybe that's the sneaky X factor here that could keep the Cincinnati Bengals in this game. But either way, I don't think he's enough to put them over the top. So I still really like the Titans outright. The spread, I'm leaning Tennessee there as well. Again, even though you've got an X factor like Giovanni Bernard, the defense and the offensive line, two big issues that I think will catch up to the Bengals in this game. Continuing on, we have got the Las Vegas Raiders at the Cleveland Browns. The Raiders 3-3, coming off a somewhat predictable loss versus the Tampa Bay Bucks last week, while the Browns 5-2, and they got the victory over the Bengals in what was a much tighter game than they probably hoped for. But obviously, the big news for them is the loss of Odell Beckham for the entirety of the season. That is a tough blow. Regardless if he was struggling or not, defenses still had to account for Odell Beckham every single week. Now, silver lining, I guess, for the Browns is they've got the pieces from tight ends to wide receivers to running backs to make up for the loss of an Odell Beckham. The real deciding factor here, however, will be the play of Baker Mayfield, because we've seen him be inconsistent a boatload of times this year. I mean, hell, in the game last week versus the Bengals, he started out horrendously, and then he kind of turned it on towards the end of the game. So we don't know which version of Mayfield we will get here. But I guess, favorably speaking, this Raiders defense isn't all that intimidating. And from the side of the Raiders, well, this is a better matchup compared to that of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I expect Josh Jacobs to have a bit of a bounce back performance, and that should help the entirety of this Raider offense as well. And for what it's worth, we actually do like Derek Carr more than Baker Mayfield. He's played more efficient, more consistent football this season, but the problem is his lack of weapons at wide receiver, and we do believe that will catch up to the Raiders. But to be fair, we think that Baker Mayfield because of that variability he has, this is a great game to hedge your bets on. Yes, we will go with the Browns outright because they've got more talent offensively that Baker Mayfield can work with. But don't be surprised if Baker Mayfield struggles, that the Raiders pull off this upset. The spread only -2.5 for the Browns. So clearly the betting public does see the Raiders hanging on in this game. And we kind of agree. So we will take the Raiders on the spread. Next, we've got the Colts at the Detroit Lions. Indianapolis 4-2 coming off the bye week, while the Lions 3-3 and against all odds are coming off a victory versus the Atlanta Falcons. They can probably thank Todd Gurley of that. And regardless of the result, though, we have to give credit to the Lions. They're at 500, kind of clicking offensively behind steady play of Matthew Stafford and the emergence of rookie DeAndre Swift at the running back position. Now, this matchup in particular, maybe on paper, you say, well, the Colts hold the edge by a wide margin, especially versus this Detroit defense. But the question is, do you have enough faith in this Indianapolis offense to win? And on top of that, to win comfortably, because the Colts have had their fair share of issues. They should be much better than what we've seen so far. And those issues begin with the quarterback in Phillip Rivers and him being inconsistent, holding on to the football far too long. And then the wide receivers, whether it's injuries or whether it's guys like T.Y. Hilton not being able to step up, all those things compound onto the offensive issues. But to be fair, we think a lot of this could come down to, the two rushing attacks here. And right now with that offensive line that the Colts have and with Jonathan Taylor, we have to give them the edge here. The only reason I say that is because I could see this being one of the lower scoring games of the week. Offensively, the Colts haven't exactly been blowing out teams. And the Detroit Lions face a stingy bend but don't break defense here versus the Indianapolis Colts. So we will take the Colts outright, but for what it's worth, we think, like I said before, this will be a lower scoring game. It'll be close. Both teams will have a chance to win. And we actually like the Lions on the spread at +2.5 because when you couple a close game with some of the mistakes that Rivers tends to commit, and with the fact that the Colts don't really blow out other teams, well, that spells yet another close game and the chance for the Detroit Lions to cover on the spread. Next, we have got the Minnesota Vikings at the Green Bay Packers, a rematch of a game we saw in Week 1, where the Packers were victorious and where they first exposed this Vikings defense. And sadly, we think this might be a similar outcome. Now the Vikings, 1-5, coming off the bye week, face a Packers team that's 5-1 and pretty comfortably beat the Houston Texans. They got back on track in a big way. And like we said before, that loss to the Bucs was a fluke. This offense is very much so legit. And even without a guy like an Aaron Jones, we saw that Jamal Williams is more than capable of carrying the load for the Green Bay Packers. And it does look like that might have to be the case yet again this week. But like we said before, versus this Vikings defense, it should not be an issue. And Dalvin Cook, a little bit nicked up. Now, we do expect him to play for what it's worth, but if for some reason he does have a setback, this game could be even uglier than we expect. Because, yes, we realize that Justin Jefferson, since Week 1, has progressed. He's also going to see a lot of Jair Alexander, who's a great shutdown cornerback. And Kirk Cousins probably is going to have to win this game with his arm. And we just don't like his chances in a shootout here versus the Green Bay Packers. Now, yes, the Packers defense has been inconsistent, but when push comes to shove, we have more faith in that unit than that of the Minnesota Vikings. And again, Aaron Rodgers playing at an MVP level, well, that's all you need to know here. Devontae Adams back to probably as close to 100% as he has been since the start of the season. That is a deadly combination. Give us the Green Bay Packers here. This is one of the simpler games of the week. The spread only -6.5 for Green Bay. We're hammering them on the spread here. We think this could turn into a blowout when it's all said and done. Moving on, we've got the New York Jets at the Kansas City Chiefs, and boy, oh boy, what to say about this game. Well, let's start here. There's a reason why this game has the highest spread of the week. The Chiefs are at -19.5, and honestly, that's accurate, and that number should probably be higher. The Jets are 0-7, still winless. They can't really do anything right at this point in time. They're going to miss Jamison Crowder probably for the second straight week in a row. And regardless if Sam Darnold is under center, I don't expect them to have similar type of surprising success like they did versus the Bills last week. We don't expect the Chiefs to settle for field goals. Chiefs 6-1 coming off a nice victory themselves. You know, they've got Super Bowl aspirations yet again. They've got an MVP quarterback in Patrick Mahomes. They've got a good defense that we expect to make life difficult for Sam Darnold. And oh yeah, we've also got the Le'Veon Bell revenge game here. And look, even if it wasn't for that, the Chiefs are going to absolutely destroy the New York Jets because the Chiefs offense is on a whole nother level. And honestly, this game could be over by halftime because I believe it will be that big of a blowout. This Chiefs defense won't give up a lot of big plays. So I really do think the longer and longer this game goes, the higher and higher this point differential will become between these two teams. And the Jets just can't hang in there with the Chiefs. So for that reason, this is relatively simple. We've already gone into it way too much. The Chiefs outright 1000%. I mean, the spread is a big number, but like I said before, I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs win by 30. I'll take the Chiefs on the spread as well. Before continuing, I want to tell you guys a little bit about a new partner of ours in Thrive Fantasy, which is an absolutely awesome daily fantasy sports app that specializes in player props. And the great thing about Thrive Fantasy is that it's super simple to use, as they've eliminated the need to do countless hours of research because they only ask you about the top tier athletes in a respective sport. Literally, all you have to do is find a contest and join it. From there, just select the props you like and rack up the most points to win a share of the prize pool. And it's not just the NFL. There's NBA, MLB, PGA. Literally, you think it, Thrive Fantasy has it. In fact, Thrive has awarded over $1.5 million in prizes since launching in 2018 and has $50,000 guaranteed in prizes weekly. So sign up today, and when you use promo code ALLDAY on sign up, you receive an instant match bonus up to $50. You can download Thrive Fantasy on the App Store, Play Store, or by visiting their website, thrivefantasy.com. So stop waiting, sign up today, use promo code ALLDAY, and start propping up today. Next up, we've got the LA Rams at the Miami Dolphins. The Rams 5-2 coming off a nice victory over the Chicago Bears, just like we predicted, while the Dolphins 3-3 coming off the bye week. And the big news for them, it's officially Tua time, as they made the decision following the bye week to go with Tua as their starting quarterback. Maybe a bit of a head scratcher. Unfortunate for Ryan Fitzpatrick, as he was playing well, as was this offense. But either way, the Dolphins are going in the direction of Tua. And with that being said, this offense just became almost impossible to predict for the Dolphins, I would say, because we don't know what Tua will present. We haven't seen preseason this year. We haven't really seen Tua step in for Ryan Fitzpatrick before this point in time. We don't know the type of chemistry he will have with his wide receivers, and we don't know how his starting will affect aspects like the rushing attack. There's a lot of things to consider here, and honestly, this is a tough matchup to kind of unleash the rookie against, because on the front, you've got Aaron Donald. In the secondary, you've got Jalen Ramsey, and I think this will be a long day for the Miami Dolphins. I think there's going to be some rust. I think there's going to be some ups and downs, and the LA Rams on the other side, I think that this is a much better matchup compared to what we saw last week versus a very stingy Bears defense. I think that they have a higher ceiling in terms of scoring potential, and I expect big games from Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and Jared Goff. What I'm trying to say is I really like the LA Rams in this game. The spread only 3.5, and for what it's worth, I don't want to sound like I'm just ruling out Tua. I just need to see at least one game's worth of sample size before I can give you an accurate prediction of this offense and Tua. So for that reason, and just because I do believe the Rams are the better team from top to bottom, I will also pick LA on the spread. Continuing on, we have got the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Baltimore Ravens. Classic divisional clash in a game that could be a contender for top match of the week, if not one of the games of the year, because this is two teams that know each other very well and have got very good defenses and have got some great playmakers offensively. Now, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're 6-0, coming off a victory over the Tennessee Titans where they had to sweat it out, but guess what? The better team won, and they're the lone undefeated squad in the NFL at 6-0, while the Ravens, 5-1, coming off the bye week, face one of their toughest challenges of the year here. Now, let's start with this. The spread, -3.5. The Ravens are favored. And look, we understand that Lamar Jackson is the ultimate X factor and that he makes this matchup offensively much closer. But when you look at the weapons he has around him versus what Ben Roethlisberger has, I would say it's not all that close. Now, you factor in the defenses, which are both great, but I do give the slight edge to that of the Pittsburgh Steelers, then all of a sudden, I don't see why this spread is so high for the Baltimore Ravens. You know, if it comes down to a low-scoring game and a close contest, which I believe will be the case, I'm going to go with the quarterback that I know has the better weapons, aka Ben Roethlisberger with Chase Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, James Conner, as opposed to Lamar Jackson and Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews. That's pretty much it. And I'll go with a better defense that I think will make Lamar Jackson have to beat the Steelers with his arm, and that'll be tough versus a great secondary. So for that reason, it might be a boring pick, it might be an unpopular pick, but I'm going with the Pittsburgh Steelers here. I do believe they are the better overall team, and I think this is just a bad matchup for Lamar Jackson. So even though the spread might say go Baltimore, I love the Steelers outright and on the spread. Next, we have got the LA Chargers at the Denver Broncos, another divisional clash. The Chargers 2-4 coming off an offensive explosion versus the Jacksonville Jaguars in a nice victory, while the Broncos 2-4, tough loss versus the Kansas City Chiefs, but let's be honest, the better overall team won. However, looking at this contest, let's start with the quarterback play, because I'd say Justin Herbert is probably playing the way that Denver hoped Drew Lock would. But to be fair, right now, especially with the injuries that Denver has, well, Justin Herbert should be playing better. Now, he is going to have a tougher matchup here because this Denver Broncos defense is better than that of the Jacksonville Jaguars. No question about that. But offensively speaking, the Chargers still have the advantage here. On top of the fact that, the Broncos have been pretty much without Courtland Sutton since the start of the season, and that they've got a struggling offensive line, and Drew Lock has been injured. Now, Tim Patrick, arguably someone that's been outplaying their first-rounder Jerry Jeudy, could very well miss this contest as well. So their backs are against the wall here for the Denver Broncos. I think that this is going to be an ugly game. I think it could be one of the lower scoring games. I don't expect Justin Herbert to have an absolutely bananas offensive performance like he did last week versus the Jaguars. I think he comes back down to earth a little bit, actually a lot of bit here, but he still got the better offensive weapons from, his tight end to his wide receivers. And the duo of Justin Jackson and Josh Kelly, even though it's not as big name as Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay, it's been able to get the job done. And I do believe Justin Herbert playing a little bit better than that of Drew Lock at this point in time. The Chargers defense also has some playmakers as well. So at the end of the day, I think we have to give the edge to the better equipped offense that is the Chargers at this point in time. But when it's all said and done, I think these two teams probably finish with similar records at the end of the year. So taking the Broncos on the spread at +2.5 is what I prefer to do. Hedge our bets here a little bit. Chargers outright, but the Broncos on the spread. Continuing on, we've got the New Orleans Saints at the Chicago Bears. The Saints 4-2, nice victory over the Carolina Panthers, while the Chicago Bears 5-2, losing in an ugly game versus the LA Rams. And now, all of a sudden, we're starting to realize why so many analysts, including ourselves, were calling the Bears one of the worst 5-win teams in the NFL. Sure, Chicago has a great defense, but guess what? It's all meaningless when you're stuck with the offense they have, with the quarterback and the play calling available to them. On top of that, throw in the fact that their best offensive weapon, Allen Robinson, is in the concussion protocol and doubtful for this contest. And this could be one of the worst offensive games we've seen for the Bears all year, which is kind of hard to believe. We continue to say it. Nick Foles isn't that much of an upgrade over Mitch Trubisky, so expect another low-scoring game for the Bears offensively. While the New Orleans Saints, this is going to be one of their tougher matchups defensively, but even without Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, they've still got a Jared Cook, they've still got an Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray, and most importantly, they've got a huge advantage at the quarterback position with Drew Brees. Now, the way I envision this game going is it probably starts out close to begin with, but by the end of the game, I think the Saints, the better overall team, will separate themselves from the Chicago Bears. Their defense has been up and down, but I just don't trust the Bears offensively in terms of play calling and in terms of their quarterback to take advantage of that. So for that reason, give me the New Orleans Saints here all day long. The spread only plus 2.5 for the Chicago Bears. That implies a lower scoring, ugly type of game, which I think to some extent we will see. But the better team in the New Orleans Saints, no question about that, should pull away. I love the Saints outright and on the spread. Next up, we have got the San Francisco 49ers at the Seattle Seahawks. Another divisional clash. The 49ers 4-3 coming off a very convincing victory over the New England Patriots, while the Seahawks 5-1 coming off their first loss of the season versus the Arizona Cardinals. We did say we thought it would be a tight game, but man, was it ever, as Seattle lost in overtime. But look, no shame in that. The Arizona Cardinals are a team that's trending upwards, and Seattle is still going to be one of the favorites in the NFC. The problem is the 49ers are also trending upwards, as the NFC West is one of the best divisions in football. A lot of tough teams in there, and I think the Seattle Seahawks might have a tough go at it here yet again. Now, let me go on record and say that I do believe the Seattle Seahawks win this game because offensively speaking, they are better equipped to come out with a victory. Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't present as many problems as Kyler Murray does in terms of rushing ability. And you've also got Deebo Samuel now hurt, but I do think Brandon Ayuk will fill in admirably, and I actually think he's going to have a very good game. You still got George Kittle, and you've still got all those running backs at reserve options. So I'm not all that worried about the 49ers. But the Seattle Seahawks defensively here is what I think will make this game a contest closer than it should be. Because like I said before, offensively, the Seahawks, they've got the MVP quarterback. They've got the better weapons at wide receiver. And if Chris Carson plays, well, they've got the advantage there as well. But defensively, that's been an issue all year long. And even with all those injuries for the 49ers, right now they seem to be, playing better than what the Seattle Seahawks have available to them. So for that reason, even though I do like Seattle outright, the spread -3.5, it's a divisional clash in the NFC West. These are close games, and Jimmy Garoppolo has a great matchup here with a great head coach in terms of play calling. I will take the San Francisco 49ers. Garoppolo seems like he's healthy in terms of covering the spread. On to Sunday night, we've got the Dallas Cowboys at the Philadelphia Eagles, and boy, things continue to get worse for Dallas. They're 2-5. They just got smacked by Washington, and Andy Dalton in the concussion protocol probably won't play in this game, which means it is the Ben DiNucci show. And if you just said who, well, don't worry, you're probably not alone. The fact of the matter is that the Dallas Cowboys have been in all worlds of trouble since the loss of Dak Prescott. Their offensive line is hurting. Ezekiel Elliott can't get it done. And this is another tough matchup in terms of, rushing opportunity versus the Philadelphia Eagles. And we haven't even mentioned the biggest problem for the Dallas Cowboys, that awful defense, which continues to lose pieces, whether it's via trade or whether it's these guys getting cut. Now, what that means for the Dallas Cowboys long-term this season, that's a conversation for another time. But what it means for them in this matchup is that you should be taking the Philadelphia Eagles. I think we could potentially see Carson Wentz have his best game of the year here. The Eagles' opportunity to have an offensive explosion, it's the best that we've seen so far. Even without Miles Sanders, Boston Scott can get it done. I expect big games from Fulgham, from Wentz, from any other offensive weapons. It honestly doesn't matter when you consider the defense they are going up against. So for that reason, I expect a big game from Wentz. I expect no problem scoring, and the Eagles defense to, potentially have a couple turnovers and make this a long day for Dallas. Give me the Philadelphia Eagles here outright. The spread -6.5 for Philadelphia. I honestly think it could be higher, so give me the Eagles on the spread as well. And finally, getting to Monday Night Football, we've got the Tampa Bay Bucks at the New York Giants. The Bucks 5-2 coming off another decisive victory last week over the Raiders, while the Giants 1-6. Tough loss to the Eagles last week, and it doesn't get any easier for them here. The thing they've got going for them is the fact that Chris Godwin will miss this game for the Bucks, but they've got plenty of other weapons. Mike Evans is going to have a big game. Scotty Miller, Leonard Fournette's back. Ronald Jones is still there. Tom Brady is playing great football, and this Giants defense I don't think will be able to stop the Bucks. And even if you think that they are able to slow them down a little bit, consider the fact that the Bucks defense has been tremendous, and I expect whoever plays running back for the Giants, whether it's Devonta Freeman since he got nicked up a little bit last week, or Wayne Gallman, or some combination of the two, this is going to be a tough outing for them to get anything going on the ground. And that means it's going to be a Daniel Jones airing out fest, which means there's going to be a lot of opportunities for turnovers, which probably means there will be turnovers. I don't like the chances here for the New York Giants. The Bucks are just a much better team from top to bottom. Give me the Bucks. I think Tom Brady has another good outing, so I like the Bucks outright. The spread +10.5 for the Giants, a little bit high. If you take the Giants on the spread, I don't blame you, but right now, the way these two teams are trending in the matchup itself, I'm going with the Bucks on the spread. So with that, we wrap up our pick'ems. Now looking at our locks of the week, we start with the Tennessee Titans, who face the Cincinnati Bengals and that awful defense. I expect a huge game from Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill to continue to play efficient football. Tennessee Titans here should have a relatively good bounce back win. Then Green Bay Packers. Minnesota Vikings, Green Bay. I like the Green Bay Packers to sweep this divisional clash. I just don't have enough faith in Kirk Cousins keeping up with an MVP favorite in Aaron Rodgers and this awful Minnesota defense in stopping the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay there. Then Jets, Kansas City. This one is as simple as it gets. Kansas City by a million here, folks. It won't be close at all. And then finally, Bucks at the Giants. I like the Tampa Bay Bucks. This is a bad matchup for the New York Giants. Daniel Jones is going to have to air it out versus a very good defense. Tom Brady has a much easier matchup. Give me the Bucks all day long. So with that, we wrap up our Week 8 NFL game picks and locks. And as always, let us hear it in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? We will do our best to answer them. And in the meantime, if you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. Also, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us and asking us questions and seeing what our thoughts are on these games as we get closer to kickoff. And even better yet, go check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. If you want early access to these picks, all you have to do is sign up for our free newsletter and you get just that. All the details in the description. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.